All right, let's call to order the Village of Lake Bluff Sustainability and Community Enhancement Ad Hoc Committee special meeting for Monday, January 31st, 2022. Can I get,
yeah, as co-chair.
Yeah, you want to do the co-chair reading?
Sure, I can read that. As co-chair, I find that an in-person meeting of the SEC is not practical or prudent due to the COVID-19 emergency. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, this meeting will be held primarily virtually pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act. Members of the public can participate via Zoom, whether at a computer or by phone. Additionally, as required by law, at least one representative from the village will be present at the Village Hall Boardroom, and the virtual meeting will be simulcast for members of the public who do not wish to view the virtual meeting from another location. All right, now call the meeting to order. So moved.
All right, second, can I get a Samantha roll call, please?
Definitely. Member Barrett?
Present.
Member Cole? I see, hold on. He raised his hand, so he might be a participant. Sorry, one second. Or he's an attendee.
Needs to be a
Promote
panelist.
to panelist,
You
yeah.
promote him.
Yep,
Yeah,
okay. He should be a panelist now.
there he is.
Okay. Member Cole?
Here, present, yes.
Member Hans?
Present.
Member Richer?
Present.
Member Twitchell?
Present.
Co-chair Runner?
Present.
And co-chair Puryear.
Present.
Okay, next up on the agenda, we allow 15 minutes for anyone to speak on any item not on the agenda. Samantha, I don't believe there's anyone on call right now. Okay.
No.
Okay, so why don't you lead us through the general business then?
Definitely. So for the sustainability plan, as I mentioned during our last meeting, this plan aims to improve sustainability in Lake Bluff while focusing on 7 key areas. Along with these 7 key areas, there's 45 actions listed that are categorized within these areas. And they're ranked by priority, difficulty, and progress that are listed in your sheet. I just want to point out that you might notice that based compared to last meeting's packet of this sheet, there actually have been some changes in the notes highlighted in yellow. There have been some changes with a few of the actions. And also one action, which is with the solid waste management area, SW3, which is lead by example by incorporating green infrastructure in public facility and street improvements, actually moved from no progress to limited progress as part of the village's new streetscape concept plan.
Okay, wait a second. I might be on the wrong packet. You said that was SR3?
Sorry, no, SW3.
Oh, sorry, fine. I'll give you that. I don't even see SW3. Oh, SW3. Fine, got it.
Okay, great. So the purpose of this agenda item is to just receive some insight from you all to have any, if you would like to make any clarifications or amendments or additions to this plan and the actions to recommend to the village board. So I actually want to gain some insight from you all how you would like to view it. So I am going to share the sheet that I have shared with you all from the Google Sheets, but would you like to view this maybe if I read the action listed from the high priority to the low priority, maybe listed from no progress made to the progress completed, what do you all think would be the most effective? Yes, Member Hans.
Where'd you go?
As a new member, it would be great to get a little background on this, how it was put together, if there are certain parties responsible for actually carrying out the work, and how progress is measured. So it's beautiful. It's so detailed. I can imagine it took a very, very long time and many, many meetings to put this whole thing together. But I'm, very specifically, how do you decide if it's difficult or, how do you know it's a high priority? How are all those decisions made? And then actually, how often is it? So just, you get it, background information. I'm trying to, if I want to evaluate progress, I just need a little more information.
Sure. Sorry, Glenn, would you mind filling in how maybe the priority is measured and how that was determined?
Yeah, sure. So this plan was drafted back in, oh my gosh, it seems like forever ago now.
It was pre-COVID.
Yes, which means ages ago. So it was adopted in 2019. I would say the drafting process really was in mid 2018, kind of going into the start of 2019. But in many ways, a lot of that work was even done before I was with the village. So that's all the way back in February 2017 when this group was formed originally. Did a lot of that in view of the Greenwich Region Core 2 framework, some other items like that. So as far as the plan itself, we came in with that framework. We came in with, we added to that a community-wide survey we administered over the course of a couple months. And then we tried working cooperatively between staff and the SEC, no outside help on this one. We worked to get from maybe the framework goals into some more concrete action steps. Those, again, were closed up around the start of 2019. And then I would say my recollection, priority, difficulty, those were later additions. We had some comments from the SEC that was necessary. And again, I haven't gone back and listened to the tape. I think we were asked to propose those as staff. I think we did so, and I think there were some adjustments at the SEC level, and I don't recall any at the village board level. So priority, difficulty, recommended by staff, reviewed and approved by the SEC and the village board. As far as how do you measure success, I would say the spreadsheet really is, the measurement, right? I mean, a lot of these are, because it's an action-oriented plan, a lot of these are actions, and so it's hard to measure them in more than a binary sense, right? Either they're done or they're not, and of course we can measure how far we are along the way, but it's not, there's not like numbers that go with them necessarily. You could do that. Similarly, there hasn't been an assignment of goal area managers or action step managers, anything like that, among the committee or internally the village staff. Again, as staff, we use this really as our blueprint for, we just try to keep our eyes open for opportunities is the simplest way I can describe it. And so as they've come up, we've tried to take advantage of them. And I like to think we've done a pretty okay job of that. So hope that's a good overview.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, I think we had the community survey, and then we also as a committee ranked these in addition and used, everyone give this a scale, and then we combined them, and then we discussed it, and they were prioritized in terms of priority. And I think a lot of the difficulty was input from village staff and how much either time it would take for village staff, how complicated it would be from a legislative, a process, how much staff time it would take to help us get these goals, if there was substantial money involved with any of these. So the difficulty was not necessarily whether the SEC thought it would be difficult for us to come to some direction, but how difficult we just simply thought it would be for the village to implement. So that's my recollection, Maureen. I don't know if that's what you recall. It does seem like a lifetime ago.
It was a lifetime ago, half a generation, I would say, 5 years, right? Isn't that how we
Yes.
view that? And I'd like to think that I had dark hair when we started. But that having been said, to your question, Samantha, about how to look at it, as I went through this, I looked at where were our high priorities and where were our low difficulties, and how did we do on those? And so maybe sorting for a high priority and still seeing if those are high priorities would be one way to do it. And again, going back to low hanging fruit,
Right.
I'm going to use the, SR2, which we've made some progress in, which was specifically consider requiring privately maintained street recycling containers to be provided where trash containers are provided, and review these arrangements during commercial site plan reviews. Label public trash cans as landfill. I wonder why we wouldn't actually have that on all of our garbage cans at our homes, like a daily reminder that that's going to a landfill. When you didn't really want to wash out the sour cream container, for instance.
Yeah.
But anyways.
I think we can go through some of these. I want to also mention from the previous committee makeup, some of the things that came to us were both high priority or things that just kind of evolved because they came before the board. As I recall, the chicken and beekeeping evolved in part because we actually had people come to the village with interest in that.
Yeah.
I think we also had two kind of out of all these items, two items that we had kind of started dipping our toes into under the previous committee makeup, which was bicycling access, improving bicycle storage racks, and also the intent to start looking at the light pollution ordinances for the village. Those were things that we were starting to touch on. I think there were a few other things that we started to discuss on the committee while we were working on some of these other issues. But just to leave, if I might describe what was still hanging from the previous board in terms of immediate initiatives, that doesn't mean that we can't change all of this now that we have different members on the committee, but to lead you where we'd already started to take a first step on were those two items.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's up to the committee whether we want to go through and just review. I think we should start off with what the committee had considered high priorities to tackle and see if those are still high priorities. We might not solve that all tonight. It might require a doodle survey or a ranking from the board to go back to some of these issues and kind of see where we all fall out. But to mix those highs with whether we consider or the village staff still considers them to be low, medium, or high difficulty, because the village board has also changed and the environment has changed legislatively on some issues, and that might help us shape it. We might still go after a high priority that's a very high difficulty if that's what we want to do, but a lot of times it's nice to mix up a high with a medium or low difficulty, because then the community gets what they want and we get it quickly. So Samantha, is this sorted first by high priority?
Yes, this is just sorted by high priority now.
And are these the only 11 highs?
Let's see.
No, there are more.
No, there's a few more.
I was gonna say.
There's 16. So would you mind if I just read through them and
Sure.
Could we talk through them?
Let's just let's talk through the high priorities, and then we just need to know how we want to come to a consensus as a committee with these.
Okay, definitely. So, the first.
Wait, can I ask two questions? What does a consensus mean? What are we just trying to agree that these are? What's the outcome of what we're trying to get to here? Prioritization based on an updated climate.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. And when we say, hey, we need to act upon these, is it that we're instructing the village to do so, correct? I'm just trying to understand what the action from this meeting is going to result in.
I think it's got to be a combination. We can't just, some items we can't just say to the village staff, go do it. There might be something that the committee needs to formulate, some process, some draft ordinance, some approach, and then the village staff goes back, works on it, comes back to us, we agree, and then ultimately anything that we propose has to be thought out and then presented to the board as a complete approach and solution for their approval.
Thank you.
I see Member Hans has her hand raised as well.
Yes, I was wondering, this is maybe a little bit different way of looking at it, but if the goal of our meeting today is to look at progress, then maybe it's the progress category we should look at first.
Okay.
So we sort by, any way you want, either complete, substantial, et cetera, and then say, are these still, look at the progress and then look at the priority instead of just starting with the priority. Because I think if our goal is to evaluate progress, then I am suggesting that maybe we sort the progress column first and then look at what that tells us about the existing plan. And then we can look at, well, we made a lot of progress in this area, but is that still really as important? So you get it priority by looking at progress first. And maybe start with no progress, because that's going to tell you a lot. If you sort by no progress, substantial, limited, and no progress, limited, substantial, and complete. I think that's my suggestion, is to maybe get at the goal for tonight, which was the sustainability plan progress.
Should we flip that on its head and work with the things that are either substantially complete or nearly complete and decide whether we want to complete them rather than the no completes? I mean, because part of it, if I'm thinking from what your perspective is what's almost done? Are we going to just abandon it, or are we going to finish it out?
Well, I think a nice way to look at it is to see where we've made no progress, and maybe that's very telling. Maybe if it's a no progress but a high priority, why haven't we made progress? So if you look at progress, then you look at the other categories, it may help us shift, because 2017, 18, 19, what was considered high priority then may not be, because nothing was ever done. So that's why I think if you start with progress and start with no progress, you can say, ooh, that still is a high priority. I wonder why we didn't make any progress on it. I just feel like, or any way you want, really, but I think if we look at the progress column and then go at the whole plan from whether there was progress or not, that fits in with what our goal is for this evening.
Well, let's poll the committee. Anyone else like to contribute on how they'd like to approach this?
Oh, it's Sophie. I'd suggest, why don't we look at what's been complete, since we have a number of new members and they could see sort of what's been going on. And then I'd probably flip back to what are the priorities and where do we want to go from there. But that would be a suggestion. That way people can get a better gauge of what's happened over the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Well, I'm good with that. I was,
Okay.
I'm good with that too.
It's a nice way to start off with what we've accomplished too. It's a nice way to start the meeting.
Sure.
Okay. There's only one completed.
Yes. Yeah.
And don't
How about-
forget, chicken and
we have-
bees are in there. We have two.
We have substantial progress too. That's close enough.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, so the first action that has been completed is to conclude the Swalco study of commercial recycling. At the study's conclusion, we chose to either to provide village commercial trash and recycling service via franchise or partner with private haulers and businesses to improve recycling rates.
Okay. Any comments on that?
No.
If not, let's move to let's sort on substantial progress next,
Sure.
since that's essentially nearly complete.
Yeah. So the first on substantial progress is to, this is for the solid waste management and recycling. So proactively and regularly educate residents on village programs and self-help opportunities to better manage waste. Use communication, signage, event outreach, and village business practices to reach residents continually. Focus initially on improving use of the village's food scrap program, as well as reducing residents' use of single-use bags, straws, and takeaway containers.
I'm curious why we're considering that substantial progress in light of some of the information we've had about how few people are food scrapping. That sort of seems like a limited progress to me. Does anybody else have any ideas about that?
I would say that we spent a lot of time last week talking about the fact that people weren't doing it enough. So I would agree with you, Nan.
Yeah.
I also think during the pandemic, we've had so much, with all the takeout food, and there's still styrofoam and a lot of plastic in use. I do think, did I see that Lake County has developed a policy to eliminate plastic, single-use plastics
Yes.
in terms of the county things. So anyway, I think that's super encouraging.
I agree. We could probably change this to limited.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, there's been some, but I do believe it needs more.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is really a high priority area that could really take some plan towards action this year that would help move us along. Because it definitely, if we're trying to reach a goal with Swalco reducing our landfill contribution, shall I say, we're going at a snail's pace. So we might need to sort of brainstorm what we can do to help that achieve that goal in a timely manner.
Glenn, it seems like maybe in my lifetime since I've been here, I think the reason I got the composter that I did was it was either a huge incentive from the village of Lake Bluff, meaning it was $20 instead of $60 if I went to go buy it. Swalco maybe provided it and you could go pick it up at a certain place locally, or maybe they even delivered it. I mean, I've had it a very long time, but I wonder if there isn't an opportunity for at the market in particular to have somebody demonstrating the different types of recycling composting containers, and maybe be able to have some sort of discount for picking them up on a Friday.
If I may, slap me down if I'm wrong. I want to avoid getting too much into these items tonight, each individual item tonight. If we say it's a high priority and there's limited progress, then we go back to make this a full, a meeting on just this item. I think you're right. I think there's issues here that are easy to approach for the most part, at least to the next level, maybe not full level. So,
this one's an area oh, sorry, Brian. This is an
Okay.
area too where it might be interesting, not for conversation, but Alexa, something to think about. That seems like one where high school students could get really engaged.
Yeah, and I do think that I heard once or twice mentioned, and I thought about it myself previously, was when we take these whole things as one committee and one process, it slows it down. We might be able to think about breaking these down into subcommittees, subtasks. Assigning them, like you said, to a high school or to people within our group to come and work on and bring back to the board. So kind of divide and conquer a little bit. Okay.
Good idea.
Next.
Okay. So the next action that's substantial progress is also the solid waste management and recycling area. It's to work to reduce the village's paper consumption by improving electronic notifications and billing, eliminating paper workflows, and encouraging the use of recyclable products for public events.
I think we could make progress here. I know that the chicken application was emailed to us, was mailed to us, and it was 3-page, it was the envelope in 2 pages. So I think we have a ways to go.
Okay.
I think it's limited progress.
Well, can the village, Samantha or Glenn, can you report on any initiatives we might not be aware of beyond in terms of paper reduction and those types of things within the village?
I just know that, okay, based on the notes that are here, that there's electronic billing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'd comment, the biggest, just by volume, the biggest movement here is in water bills and vehicle stickers, right? So together that's, off the top of my head, 2,000 households and a few hundred businesses build, 3 times a year. Vehicle stickers are thousands of vehicles a year. And so those, I don't have a statistic off the top of my head what percentage are all electronic, but those are at least majority electronic now. And that's a pretty big dent, at least as far as the paper that we send out and take back in. We certainly can look at business licensing and moving that over. That's always been kind of a trick in that, the customer service feedback we hear here is we need to have those physically signed. We can do electronic signatures that comes with a cost. We could certainly something we can look at, but something we were hearing before is, well, we'd email them and then essentially we're pushing the responsibility onto residents to print it out and sign it and scan it back in and send it back in. So definitely don't disagree that there's some improvements that can be made there, but that's, a couple 100 pages a year. And so there's been some big dents in other areas of our work.
Fair.
Yeah. Okay. Next.
Okay, so for the next goal is for energy conservation. The action is analyze the installation of a model renewable solar energy system at a municipal facility. Consider implementation based on projected return on investment from incentives and energy savings.
So where are we at with our solar? I'm trying to read the notes here.
Sure.
It says solar program in Elgin and applies roughly 8
Oh, yeah.
kilowatts annually in community solar
Yeah.
credit. That's not
Yeah.
quite the same as having a solar program in town.
True.
So 88,000 isn't bad, but what can we do to make it better?
True. Could be public works, could be village hall, could be somewhere else where we start to implement some solar.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe this is, I agree that the community solar program was a nice addition to us joining in. Maybe it has, And some of the stuff is measured against where we were, 5 years ago, in terms of, wow, we're part of a community, and where we might be now, it's like, that isn't enough progress, So,
Yeah. So that's probably fair. I mean, maybe we should have not that we didn't make substantial progress, but it's not enough progress. Maybe that's a different marker.
Ongoing progress or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
Continued progress or something.
Okay.
Because I hate to say limited, because that was a big thing at the time. So same with the paper reduction with the electronic billing. But okay, we don't have to do the slide, but as long as we have the general feeling of the board. Okay, next.
Sure. So another action for the energy conservation. It's consider an optional program that allows residents to participate in the wholesale purchase of electricity from 100% renewable sources if village-wide electrical aggregation once again becomes economical.
So could this be completed if we are a partner in the state's largest price match? Could it be considered? I mean, the way it's worded, it just says consider an optional,
You're right, Tammy.
We do have the option to purchase renewable energy for some of the residents. Glenn, there was recently something done with this, right, in the last 6 months.
Yeah, that's correct. So within the last few months, this is a 3-year deal. We entered into an aggregation deal that's just a little bit different than the plan contemplated here, right? So originally the thought here was that, if we did aggregation as we used to in the past, you would offer an option for residents to be able to buy in and get 100% sustainable energy, 100% offset energy, et cetera, et cetera. So the program we've done here is that, not all residents are moved over to an alternate supplier from ComEd, but essentially in a certain sense, we've given this alternate supplier the ability to pick and select the most economical customers it can serve and to move them over onto alternate supply, which is still the same supply mix as under ComEd. And then to use, they make money from doing that, and they rebate some of that money back to us. And then that money is available for sustainability programs. Some communities are using it to buy carbon offsets, renewable energy credits. The village board hasn't made a determination on what to use that pot of money for. So it's important progress, right? It's probably, depending on how that money is used, it's probably more consequential than an opt-in program for individual residents, but it's not strictly mutually exclusive. But if you were to offer that program to residents as a municipally sponsored offering, that starts to eat away at the rebate, right? By comparison, an individual resident still and always has the ability to go out on their own and to get that from a private provider.
And do we have a list of providers accessible to residents that are friendly to the Lake Bluff community?
There's not. So we have our aggregation provider, MC Squared Energy Services, and that information's out there on our website. We don't have another sponsored, we don't have sponsorships or engagements with other alternative energy providers. I'd have to look. I suspect our contract would probably preclude us from doing that. Certainly anyone in Lake Bluff could, anyone in the state can go to pluginillinois.org, I think. It might be .com or .org. And you can see every accredited alternative energy supplier in the state. And you can pick any of them based on whether you're in ComEd or Ameren. And that shows you the price, it shows you the mix. You can pick your offer.
Glenn, if I understand this correctly, with the money that will come through this program back to the board with respect to renewable sources, should the SEC play a role in recommending how that money is sustainable credit money is used within the village?
Perhaps you could, yeah. The last action by the village board is they said the board would look at how to use those monies at a different date. So they didn't refer it back or anything necessarily. You could certainly ask for that, and I know later this year, this calendar year, I think around September, October, is when we'd get the first payment on the aggregation participation.
Yeah, I mean, we are simply an advisory board to the village board, so we don't have any authority. We can only make recommendations. I think this could be moved from a low to a medium, since there is an ability to recommend how financial resources are used, and maybe even back up to EC2, you know, in terms of how that money from this program is spent. So I think this could go to a medium, since it's already in progress, and there's ways for us they could be ignored. They don't have to be approved, but we can certainly make recommendations, right, in a letter to the board.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. I'm certainly not trying to discourage you from that either. Just trying to be clear for the process.
I understand. The financial approvals are always through the village board.
And would another nuance to this be providing an education to residents about how they can sign on with more renewable energy? I don't think that's something that people know much about. I don't know much about it, so I
Sure.
assume most people don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Again, a note for interest by law, every time we send out aggregation notices, I have to tell you at the bottom that you can choose an alternate supplier, and I have to give you the information to do that. So in some sense, when people see this, they are seeing that information, but you could do a better job of communicating that, especially that aggregation notice is once every few years. And so you could certainly put more out there.
Right. I mean, again, I don't want to get in the weeds, but I think this is worth looking at, because I just think about, like, everything comes down, a lot of these things come down to funding. And if we look at a solar project, if we did something, say at the fire station or the public safety building with solar, and that was also a way to educate the residents on what options are available, it could be all combined. I don't want to get into the weeds because we'll be here all night, but I think this could be moved to a medium.
I second that.
I agree.
Okay, next.
Okay, so the next action is for a water conservation goal. It's to continue to investigate and seek solutions to system water loss. And this is for the water meter replacement program that the village is currently undergoing.
All the wireless water meters that were put in.
Yes.
It'll be a good way to track our water usage and listen into our conversations. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We have the vaccine for that, actually.
There you go. We gotta be careful.
Careful, Spotify.
Member Hans?
Yes, I think this is a great example to look at. It's high priority, high difficulty, and substantial progress. But looking at this with fresh eyes, the action is to continue to investigate and seek solutions to system water loss. So my question would be, what was water loss before, and what is it now
Fair.
after you've done this action right here? Because that to me is maybe a number you could quantify, and maybe you could quantify that to say it used to be this, and then we did this, and now it's only this.
Sure.
You see, so I would look at this and say, I know that you did all the water meters, but how do I know that that made a difference?
Definitely.
The work that was done, it was a substantial amount of work, but did it actually reduce the loss? How do we know that water loss, we had less water loss? See what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how you get at that. Maybe you change the goal to, instead of continue to investigate and seek solutions, you might change the way that's worded to say, put measures in place that will reduce the amount of water that's lost. And somewhere in there, you have to measure what the water loss was and what it is now. And then hopefully think of some type of realistic goal. And that's a very difficult thing to do. That would take a lot of work, probably a lot of money, but just, I would suggest maybe rewriting that goal because we will always continue to investigate and seek solutions. That's just kind of a given. That's
So-
our committee.
So would you add and quantify?
I would say, let me think about this. Take steps to reduce the amount of water that's lost in our village system. And if you say that, then yes, you have made substantial progress because this is a step you've taken.
That's under, do we not have we have different water conservation approaches, right? So this is more data education.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair.
Yeah.
This is Drew. Can you hear me?
Sure, Drew.
Might I address this really quickly?
Sure.
And make a general statement, if I may?
Yes.
So to members Hans' point, we do have this data. We went into this, the village borrowed $1 million to make this investment to try to reduce. We buy a certain volume of water from CLC Jawa. We turn around and bill our customers. This is what our water utility bill, system is. And there is loss in the system, just as you can imagine, a bunch of pipes, all over the village. You're going to have, whether the pipe connects to another pipe, there's leakage, and there's leakage coming out of valves in the system. There's breaks periodically, but so there's a loss of water. But we knew that we were losing too much water. There's an acceptable amount of loss based off of design and system, and so and then there's also a regulatory guidepost about how much water is acceptable to be lost, because we and many others are drawing our water from a precious resource of Lake Michigan. So there's only acceptable amount of loss that we can have. And so that was why we went down this journey, and so we can quantify this, and the village probably should have a metric where we can try to find a certain percentage each year to reduce this to reach the goal of what is acceptable. And what Member Hans is talking about, and we can give more specifics, but I guess I'd like to add is this is not intended to be a victory lap, but I think there are a lot of new members that before, there was no plan in the village, then there was a plan with goals, and a lot of this was the creation of programs and offerings that in a world where there weren't any, so it was very binary.
Right.
There was nothing, and then there's something. And so now is how well have we been doing those somethings? So I think that you all should be thinking about that as you go through each one of these,
Right.
is saying, what are some reasonable indicators of success? And, how can we monitor them in terms of metrics? And we're doing this in other committees in the village all the time is, what are good, what's our dashboard look like? How are we doing well?
Sure.
But I guess for the benefit, you co-chairs per year and Renner have been here from the beginning, so that there was nothing, now there's something, and we're doing it, and how well we're doing it is now the new goal, right? It's not the absence or presence.
Right. This is like a high school graduation, high school report card. It's like you got college next, but that doesn't diminish the fact that you graduated with substantial honors in some of these programs. So I understand it. This is a retroactive look, and not necessarily this is done for the future.
Well, right, and it's something like you were talking earlier about. I was watching on television and I jumped on the conversation about our progress with regards to diversion of food waste. In Lake County, we're doing pretty well. In the Midwest, we're doing pretty well. But for our own standards and our own benchmarks, we can do a lot better. And so it's always compared to whom or to what, right? So the idea of what are our indicators. Hopefully this exercise will generate some key indicators of success for the various goals. Some may not be so easily, quantified, but for I think you can come up with some things and we can help generate that. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I think you guys seem to be going down that path, but as you keep going down this list.
It's a good point. It's a good point. And I don't mind taking a little victory lap either. The committee has worked hard on this, the village has worked on it, and these are achievements to be noted. So
some of them are pretty substantial, and so I appreciate the ever moving of the finish line, right? Because we all do it. So and we're going to have to. But I guess I just wanted to say is,
Yeah, understood.
take a moment, hurt your arms, patting yourselves on the back, and then move on.
Right. Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
I mean, one thing I'd like to piggyback on top of what Drew was saying is there a way that we can provide quantifiable statistics that we can reference as the years progress? I don't think we need to figure that out on this call, but if we have the data for the water loss throughout the past 5 years, can we somehow link it to this sustainability plan so that through all of these things, if there are quantifiable data that is associated with each of these cells, so that when the time comes for us to evaluate the plan again next year, we're not continuing to have the same conversations over generalized sort of language and
Yes,
scope.
yes, and agree and understand that both Glenn and I are desperately trying to let Sam run this meeting. So, and we have information that she may not, but I think generally speaking, I think what we can do is I don't think this is going to get done in one night, but the idea is like we can come back and say, here's a good, maybe a dashboard indicator for this one, or maybe 2 for this one, and maybe there's none for this one, but we can help feed that. Yes, for certain.
I think it would be helpful for the committee, but even more important to sort of sing from the rooftops for the community so that they can see progress being made, like a commitment to these things and then actions being taken. So I want you guys to get the recognition you deserve for what's been accomplished.
All right, going on. Samantha, you can take us next one.
Sure. So the next action is for the goal stormwater solutions. It's provide effective public information on stormwater solutions to equip homeowners to protect their property from flooding and damage.
Yeah, I know all the way back to George Russell, there was a lot of education and a lot of discussion on how to help homes that were dealing with surface flooding and damage. There was also, I believe, back when George is, we changed some of the building codes, and Samantha, you may know this, Drew, and others can chime in about new home construction and detainage basins in new homes. So I know the village has been working hard to do this. I know that there's also been some discussion on things like rainwater gardens and different types of landscaping as well that homeowners can use to control flooding. So I think a lot has been done on this. And again, I think this is one of those things where stormwater flooding and stormwater issues for residents and the village is going to continue to be a high priority for solutions.
I think to build on that, this is one that will probably never end. It's sort of an evergreen something, Yeah.
All right, Samantha, next.
Okay, so the next action for also stormwater solutions, it's following the conclusion of the village's stormwater study later in 2019. A plan for public improvements recommended by the study. Given goal NS-2 gives particular interest to projects that mitigate risks to ravines. And NS-2 is actually right below here, which also has substantial progress. Continue to lead in ravine maintenance, protection, and restoration. Pursue partnerships with outside agencies and provide landowners that preserve ravines. Consider zoning changes to shift future development further away from vulnerable tableland.
I think this is also one of those continuing educational opportunities, because as people move on to ravines and they don't understand what it is or how they can actually impact the ravines, I really do feel this is a continuing, this will never end. also.
Yeah, I know that we had some really good presentations, again, prior to the pandemic, of the stormwater studies and the little red zones around town and the village's infrastructure, planned infrastructure improvements that have been going on. It might be good to circle back to this for the committee and give a status update on where the issues are in town for stormwater issues and what progress again has been made. And it's going to be ongoing,
Sure.
along with the deep pipe or deep tunnel or whatever it is we're calling it, that's starting phase 1 studies.
Yep.
Okay, next.
Sure. So NS-1, which focuses on natural spaces. It's publish a list of recommended native and adapted species which support the village's natural beauty, increase in which will continue through diversity to increase resilience against plant disease outbreaks and support pollinator populations. Lead by example by using these on municipal properties and in rights of way. Evaluate their application in site plan review of commercial landscapes.
Yeah, the landscape playbook was tremendous thing to have for the community to start talking about what we're going to use. And then the work that we've had on 176 and along the bike path in Sheridan that's coming up. The parks that have been put in, I think it was on Washington. I mean, there's been a lot of work done with this. I think it definitely has been a substantial progress, and more this year coming.
Yeah, I think with the number of these that are sort of evergreen issues, it may be interesting to look at them just annually, sort of what progress did we make this year? What were those things? And track that. Then each year is a new year. Because I don't think we'll ever be able to say they're complete. So maybe if we track them by year, just making sure we're on it each year, providing that information or doing things for the residents.
Okay, next.
Sure. So it's another action for the natural spaces goal. As I read before, continue to lead in ravine maintenance, protection, and restoration.
Yeah, I know the ravines when I was on the board, the costs of attacking the ravines was just phenomenal. And I know the villages, it's indicated how much money is spent there, but those are just huge costs, huge projects.
Brian, can I ask what is driving the cost so high? Just why are they so expensive?
Well, you've obviously seen the ravines around town. And Samantha or Drew or Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically as we look at stormwater discharge, at one point those pipes were just simply brought to the edge of properties or the end of boundaries and discharged. And so there's been continual erosion, and having to go back in and put in various advanced landscaping and stabilization rocks and beds and things like that to withstand rainwater, stormwater erosion as we go into the lake areas is just a very complex, expensive process.
And those pipes, those drain water pipes, are those public or those private pipes?
Both.
Mostly private though.
Yeah.
And the majority, I mean, with rare exception of Lillian Dell, right? You know, that 16 feet at the toe of the ravine for Lillian Dell, and then a portion of Ravine Park. Most ravines in the village are private. And so, you know, we serve as a regulatory body about how private property owners interface and install improvements in those ravines from time to time. But largely those they are stormwater conveyances, as Co-Chair Renner pointed out, but most of that happens on private property. So we've tried to pride ourselves in setting the best example that we can for public ones. This is how we're going to treat them. Certainly the investment in Lillian Dell that's just been done to meet the new 100-year storm event by design is exceptional progress. And the other is the Park District's property. So I think there's been a lot of good examples on public lands, and then it comes down to how can we educate those along the private ravines to, the right ways to maintain them and live adjacent to them.
So we are, I just want to see if I'm getting this straight. We are saying that the village is responsible for those ravines, but that we can't touch the majority of the areas where most of the sort of bad stuff is happening.
We are responsible in regards to setting regulatory standards, right? So from a that standpoint, we have very limited control of the private property, in the sense that we're not going to put public dollars in private spaces.
Right. So can we, knowing that the cost of the ravines is highly priced and most of the work that needs to be done is on private property, as a regulatory body, can we perhaps make some advances in requirements for those pipes or adjustments?
It's super hard, McCamey. I mean, having been in a lot of these homes, you just even telling them that they can't dump grass clippings down the ravine,
Mm-hmm.
They don't always hear it.
Member Hans?
This reminds me of when they had to go through all the work of creating a tree ordinance for Lake Bluff. I know that was a huge effort, but could ravines fall into that category? People have a lot of trees on their property, but the village still put ordinances in to try to, improve protection of trees. So is this something that we could put on a to-do list? I'm not sure who would do it, when it would happen, but, getting back to the point about, can the village do something? Maybe it could do something in terms of an ordinance to protect the ravines.
Member Hans, the village does do that. In fact, we regularly interpret the tree protection regulations to facilitate the removal of non-native trees, to include maples in ravines, for the purpose of trying to encourage, grasses that are much better at stabilizing ravines. And so we have our codes allow us that flexibility to use them to facilitate good outcomes for ravines in terms of stabilization, which is the primary issue, right?
Yes, I understand that the tree ordinance has an impact on ravine stabilization, but in terms of putting in ordinances that say you can't put grass clippings in the ravine, even though it's your private property, or something specific to private landowners who have ravines, besides a tree ordinance that overflows onto ravines. So something above and beyond a tree ordinance that would take steps to protect a ravine from being a dumping ground, from people to, washing their cars and the suds go in the ravine. So that's what I'm saying, is take the idea of a tree ordinance and then say we have a ravine ordinance.
We have bluffs and ravine protections in our codes, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't or couldn't be periodically reviewed to make sure they're consistent with contemporary best standards, to your point, right?
Great.
Yeah, and I think that's what this current standard calls for, but it could probably have a little more clarity around that.
Okay.
Sure.
And member Twitchell here, I want to say my internet is unstable, so I'm here. I just have turned the video off, trying to stay in the meeting. So just know I'm here.
Okay. All right. Past the hour mark. Let's keep going.
Sure. So the next action is also for natural spaces. It's allocate resources for collaborations by the village and community partners that remove invasive species. Emphasize buckthorn removal and, where appropriate, replacement with native privacy screening. Support Lake County's goals concerning buckthorn eradication.
What resources do I, as a citizen of Lake Bluff, have when it comes to eliminating buckthorn on my property?
A chainsaw.
That's not going to do it. Are there any educational pamphlets or anything that the village has, or recommended actions partake? Can I cut down those trees without having to speak with the village arborist? I have a ton of buckthorn on my property. I don't want any of it, but I don't want to have to go through a permit process or anything like that. Can I remove that stuff on my own and not have to? Because technically they are trees, correct? Most of them are.
They are, but they're not protected. Sam, I don't want to jump in if you know the answer. Please tell me if you want me to jump in or not.
Please do.
Okay. So, Member McCamey, so the answer is yes, you do need to go through a permit review process to even remove non-natives and invasive species. We do that because some people get confused. You know, sometimes buckthorn can be confused for ironwood, which is a very desirable species. So we just want to make sure what's being done. But there is a no-fee permit for it. And typically, you know, we turn around permits for tree removals and buckthorn removal usually within the same week. And again, there's no fee, but it's something that we used, and the forester will go out and usually talk with a homeowner and get a lot of it. We use that as an educational experience for them and for us to see what their long-term goals are. And we say, hey, this is what our rules are. And so it's a information share that residents really appreciate and enjoy. There are other resources available to homeowners. Open Lands, I actually got an email late last week from Open Lands, the Chicago Metro version of Lobola, that are going to homeowners' properties around the area to help, you know, be consultants free of charge to help property owners, you know, manage their properties and pursue more native landscaping, including buckthorn removal. I don't recall or have in front of me the village's any sort of the village's website about, you know, what do we talk about the removal of that, honeysuckle, et cetera. But so there is some resources, but yes, you have to go through the village process, but it's to protect the those that, you know, closely resemble buckthorn.
Okay, go ahead, Marina.
Don't we also have some subdivisions that actually almost prohibit the removal of buckthorn?
Yes, there's been certain subdivisions, namely, I'll say it, Tangley Oaks.
I was trying not to, but
well, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So I mean, they have conservation areas throughout that subdivision that has been largely occupied over the years by buckthorn and other non-natives that they have, I think, generally discouraged removal of. They have allowed it when you've come back with a comprehensive planting plan, I believe, but they benefit or try. They value the benefits of the buffer yard that buckthorn provides, which is tremendous, and because it's, you know, it's the first to leaf out and last to lose its leaves, and almost acts as an evergreen. But they value that buffer yard between neighboring properties more so than the value of getting rid of that invasive species. And again, that's been, that's been the group think for a while. Is that your subdivision?
No, it's not. It's interesting that they consider those conservation spaces when it's rife with invasive non-native species, but that's a story for another time. I guess what I'm noticing with a lot of these initiatives here on the sustainability plan is there's a lot of items that that require sort of communication, right, in order for us to help alleviate some of the stresses that are happening in the town of Lake Bluff. And it kind of takes me back to the conversation we had in our last meeting about using social media as a medium to connect with our citizens. And I would like to potentially see if this committee could recommend to the board investing in a social media manager position solely for village communication in order to help us with things like these, you know, talk about food waste program in a comprehensive and robust manner, not just one post a month, but an entire campaign, say for buckthorn, do entire campaign across all channels for a week, touting all of the resources, work, history, etc., etc. I know a social media manager position is not an easy job. It is a tough one. It is not only because it is public facing and you deal with internet trolls, but also because it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of education, and is not really one of the most profitable positions that is out there. But I think for this committee in the village, it could be invaluable. I guess that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about general and education, and I think that's something we have done some on, and we talked about it last time, and it's definitely an area we need to continue to prioritize. Okay, next item.
Sure. So it's also within the natural space goal. It's pursue creation of neighborhood gardens that utilize open land and allow residents to grow fruit cooperatively. Promote home food gardens and continue thoughtful pilot programs that support urban agriculture, such as the keeping of chickens, bees at home.
So I think in the COVID era, which we find ourselves, that this practically moves from low to at least medium, because people did explore gardens. Some of them even moved them to their front yard, but I wonder if there isn't the opportunity to keep expanding this and to allow people to even garden in their parkway.
Yeah, I would definitely say this is not a low priority anymore. Even though we made substantial progress with the bees and chickens, I agree it should be a higher priority.
Yeah. So move on up.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Sure. So this is with the bicycle and pedestrian transportation goal. Provide bicycle parking at municipal facilities in business districts and at key public destinations. Design public bicycle parking to meet professional standards for number, location, and type.
So, elephant in the room here. We're not anywhere close to substantial progress, I don't feel, on this. And I think it is not a low difficulty by virtue of the fact that it's taken 5 years to really get anywhere. And even though the downtown streetscape improvements projects includes it, it doesn't, we really haven't, in 5 years, we haven't gotten a rack in place. So I don't think substantial progress is accurate. And I think that it should be low difficulty, but apparently it has been high difficulty.
I would agree from the standpoint of it might be substantial progress on paper right now, but we still haven't achieved it. So I would agree with that. I'd also say that part of it was just as we were working on some of these new racks, particularly at the train station and other areas, we hit the pandemic and revenues dropped off. And I know that the village had this on their list and it got cut for funding. And I think we're returning back to an area where this is going to be hopefully implemented with the streetscape plan and hopefully at the train station with the high security system soon. But I'll let Samantha or others comment on the current status of all that.
Drew or Glenn, do you have a current status on this?
They've left you.
Gonna take that.
Yeah. So again, there's money available. We're still looking at what racks to purchase. Those are called out in the downtown streetscape improvements for sure. In block 2, there's specific money that'll have to be spent this year to put those in when the spring comes. I'm not sure on the status of installations elsewhere, except to say that over in the South Sheridan Road landscape plan, that includes racks as well. But for sure, we have 2 projects that are mid-process that include installation of racks. And I believe funding available for racks in other locations.
But we haven't chosen yet. Is that what I heard you say? We have not actually made a choice or ordered, correct?
There is no order. There is a specified hoop rack in the South Sheridan Road landscape study plans. Those still aren't finalized to go out to bid. Those will be going out to bid, I would think, within the next 30 days.
And the train station upgrade parking, bike parking, has that been put in the budget or approved yet?
Yes, and I would say, no, the train station, there is some additional bike racks, but what we're talking about is what this group talked about was having the more, I'll call it secure racks that you guys were recommending, the SEC was recommending for the train station, and then the downtown proper would have the other ones that the ABR was talking about that were, slightly more, I'll call them kid friendly.
Right, correct. That was the compromise.
Yep. So that's what we're planning to achieve here.
Well,
These
I think
ones
since we
downtown.
haven't achieved it, it's just a plan, so.
Yeah, there's money in the budget in the current year, and we are close to, there was a couple other things I was going to bounce off you guys, but because I didn't want to put it on this agenda, otherwise you'd be seeing it tonight. So
Well, so when will we see it?
your next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Okay, so the last one for substantial progress is install free bicycle repair station or air pumps at high traffic locations, such as at regional trail intersections or at the train station.
The only one that I know now that is in the plan but has not been purchased yet is as you mentioned, is the Sheridan Road plan that we just looked at recently at the SEC, right?
That's the only one in any plan at this moment. But with that, like Glenn said, that's going to go out on the street and a bid package very soon. I'd say, dare I say, imminent.
Right. And I know there had been some talk about putting one near the train station or downtown as well, right?
I don't know if they would put one that close. And frankly, I think there was some concern about bumping up against our bike shop, right? The idea of like, we didn't want to necessarily get that close, but I guess I'd be surprised if there was another one within near the CBD.
Right, but there's a difference, and again, I know Glenn's an expert at this because he's studied it, but there's a difference between the repair stations and kind of fill your bike tire stations, right? There's different levels.
Maybe by the lake.
But I would think that this is in progress and not substantial progress. And I would put it, medium's fine. I wouldn't put it high, but I would say that, yeah, maybe not a repair, but I mean, at the train station, maybe at the lake and maybe other areas, it would be great to have the fill stations, the less tool-y ones.
Yeah, and I don't know, and Glenn, maybe in terms of planning best practices with, what is usually, is there one every, mile? Is there one every 3 miles? I don't know what the best practices is, but probably worth coordinating with our sister cities in and around us to know, what's the next closest one along the North Shore Trail or the McClory Trail. Again, so as not to have so many in, a short distance.
Yeah, typically, I'm not aware of a hard rule like that. I'd have to do a bit more research on it. I mean, I'd say typically you see the, at least in my mental image, you see the tool type a bit more than the air type out in public. I think that's just, frankly, the tool type. An all-weather tool set is pretty cheap. The pumps get damaged a little more easily, so it might just be a convenience thing.
Okay, I don't want to dwell on it too much. I'm not supposed to get in the details, but I think we'll definitely circle back on this, and hopefully soon we'll have more. Okay, what's next, Samantha?
So now would you like to look by priority or again at progress, looking at limited progress?
Let's just keep going to limited progress and we'll finish with no progress.
Sure. Okay, so the first action for limited progress is add recycling containers in public realm spaces with the goal of providing one recycling container adjacent to each public trash can. Consider requiring privately maintained street recycling containers to be provided where trash containers are provided, and review these arrangements during commercial site plan reviews. Label public trash cans as landfill prominently to encourage thoughtful personal waste habits.
And I know there's been some limited progress, and if I may, there was some debate with the architectural or planning boards, and particularly with regard to the downtown areas, how many of these would go. But maybe Samantha, Glenn, or Drew, you could give us an update on that for the committee. I know there's more downtown than there used to be.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
So
that's-
there's, very gentle expansion of public trash cans in the CBD. That's really been, I think the last one I recall was there was a private fundraising effort, I think by the Girl Scouts back in 2017, 2018 to purchase a new recycling can. High level, there's the streetscape plan includes adding these future recycling cans. We're working on new labeling, looking at the third part of this goal for the South Sheridan Road landscape plan that will likely carry back over into our other existing cans. So that's landfill at the top. That's some new lids. That's probably plaques that say recycling. Again, those details not 100% finalized. Not really a whole lot of progress on that middle category.
Okay. Next one.
Sure.
Can I, one more thought, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the comments that came out of the Architectural Board of Review that the village board really, I think really resonated with them was, hey, we're going to put this new landscaping in on block 2, and it's going to be the kind of the benchmark or prototype for the future of the CBD and how it looks and feels and operates. So we're kind of not necessarily looking to go 100% in on any and all improvements, right? We want to kind of take our time and get it just right and roll these out, whether it be bike racks or trash cans and recycling bins and street furniture. And so we kind of wanted to go slow and kind of live with it. So as we didn't, I think ABR member Matt Kerouac, an architect, said, kind of try to shove 50 pounds in a 25-pound bag, right? It's a limited area. We want our restaurants and merchants and businesses to feel like they can help, I'll call it decorate the streetscape and make it their own at the same time with their signage and things to give it interest and show, activity to show that this is a busy, exciting place to be and be part of. So that we weren't quickly filling it in with other public items, so to speak. So I think there is just a rhythm issue. I wanted to alert to you all that I recognize you guys are difficult graders, professors, and my, what is significant progress, what is not. But just bear in mind, there is a desire to kind of just mind our rhythm as we do this and do these improvements.
Yeah, and I understand that, and especially with regard to the streetscape improvement and how things get phased in. We talked about, less concrete, more green, and how that would eventually be brought in. And I understand that, but there are also some areas, I don't know how to phrase this, where we would stake our flag a little stronger, like at the train station and other areas, where we would say, no, this has got to go now. And it would simply be our recommendation to the board. And it sounds like some of that funding is already in place, but I think there's ways for the SEC to simply advocate on behalf of our objectives,
Understood. Thank you for clarifying that.
All right.
Okay, the next action is, in lieu of regulation, explore how to monitor and incentivize commercial use of green technologies, such as renewable energy or sustainable building materials. Consider aligning programs to rating systems such as LEED or Energy Star.
So why don't you, Samantha, there's a summary there on permitting, because I know that was something we didn't have in the past.
Whoops. Here it says in 2020, the village enacted a 100% waiver of permit costs to install electric vehicle chargers, as well as a 25% reduction to permit costs for projects that earn LEED or I'm just going to say PHI-US certifications.
And I think that's notable. I know it was something I brought up, I think, Drew, a long time ago. I know there's been a lot of discussion, particularly in the commercial, but what's our current permit fee? Is it 2.5%, 3%? I'm trying to remember. Generally speaking. Yeah, and we've had some pushback that's a little on the higher side. So I think particularly when you're looking at, reduction in permit fees to go with a green building design, I think that's a nice step. So I think the limited progress is the way to go. I think that we may also look, I think I would say this is, my feeling is that I know it was listed as a high difficulty. I think it's more of a medium difficulty these days. And I'll give you an example. If you were to buy, say, an electric vehicle, an EV, or maybe a plug-in hybrid vehicle, maybe your village sticker could be free. There's other things to do, in terms of waving the carrot for people adopting programs personally.
Yeah. And I'll, Co-Chair Renner, I'll note here, actually, we focused, the spreadsheet here focuses on the building side of this, but what you just said is also a village policy. So if you've got an electric vehicle, I believe you're getting a free sticker right now.
Oh, great. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Next.
Sure. Offer a plug-in hybrid charging station at the Metro parking lot and consider installation in other areas. This is just included in the village's streetscape plan.
Okay.
Glenn, would you share with the group what I think you're at a planning professional education seminar where I would say regional, if not national, architect / urban designer had made a comment about location and placement of charging stations in municipalities. Do you recall what I'm asking you here?
Yeah. And so before I even get into that, just a note, coming out of this and some other related discussions, good decarbonization talk at the last state planning conference. We've been working with a few folks, mostly Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, to put together a presentation more aimed at sustainability groups that covers some of that ground. So that's something we're hoping can be made available to committee members and some other people in Chicago and here soon. Still a lot of calendaring, a lot of work that goes into that. As far as what the village administrator is referring to, there's a lot of discussion around electric vehicle charging stations at this point, right? So there's, of course, they're becoming more prominent. There's state funding, et cetera, and so you finally have enough interest to draw out some contrarians, let's say. So this was some dialogue that came up in a conversation with Doug Farr, who's a pretty notable sustainability guy, land use planner, architect in the area, mostly, well, I guess all three of those. And it was really, what's in suburban areas, what's the point of hybrid charging stations? And that's not completely dismissive, but just in the sense that if you're in a suburban car dominated area, you have an electric vehicle charger at home, you need to purchase a vehicle that has the capacity to get you from home to work and back again, and you're going to plug it in every night when you get home. And so are we really going to build out this trickle charging EV infrastructure in public parking spots and shopping malls and things like that? And is it really reasonable to expect it'll be used the way we think it will? Because it's not the same as a gas station. It has different constraints. And so that's some of the dialogue that's going on out there, right at the same time as we're socially, societally, at the state and federal levels, getting ready to throw a lot of money at the same question. So
Yeah.
For what it's worth, to follow up on that, I work in Lake Forest and I park right next to the charging stations, and they're full all the time. They're full all the time. So yeah, for what it's worth.
And so are they at the malls. At Northbrook Court all the time, by the Apple store.
yeah, I mean, there's
Not all of us at home have the high-speed chargers, so I can charge much faster at a station than I can at home.
That's a good point. And you mentioned there are state, and now it's part of the infrastructure bill, isn't it, that some funding is going to be provided for this? So there's more money available. So that does help if we're able to get funding for it.
Yeah, well, there's the two-part question there, right? So one, is there money, and then two, can we get the money? And we, it remains to be seen how the second part of that question will shake out for Lake Bluff, but it's something we've got a couple of years to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
I'd also suggest that it's not just for residents, it's for people from other communities who come and enjoy our restaurants or our shops. So anyway, just a little feedback.
Okay, moving into the stormwater solutions goal. Lead by example by incorporating green infrastructure in public facility and street improvements. And this is the one where the progress has been changed from no progress to limited progress.
I see that's because of the streetscape plan.
Yes, exactly. Oops, I'll just read from the notes. The village's new streetscape concept plan identifies future green infrastructure opportunities in the central business district.
Okay. And we're not going to resolve all these tonight. I want to make sure we have enough time to go through them all, but okay.
Sure. Okay, now looking at natural space, provide interpretive signage for restoration and natural resource projects that raise awareness and convey importance.
Mm-hmm. And we just talked about that with the recent Sheridan Road project, right? That's going to be one of the things they're going to look into.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And will we have some signage on 176 as well about restoration in progress, something like that? Mm-hmm.
We
are. I apologize, Coach. Go ahead.
No, I say we also talked, I think, a little bit about the at the water plant restoration wells for signage.
Yeah, so at least as far as the working signage, let's call it restoration in progress, we're thinking we'll have that out probably next week is when the signage will be ready to pick up. So that's finishing up that design now. We're also starting to look at some more interpretive permanent signage to install at the trail. There'll be a couple other steps in that. That probably needs Lake County sign off before we can put something off the trail that's their property, but that's work in progress too. And to your point, a good reminder, we'll reach out to our friends at CLC Jawa and see if they'd like to piggyback with us on that.
Okay, Samantha, next.
Sure. Emphasize the maintenance of historic and heritage trees, promote the establishment of new native trees such as oaks and hickories to begin to replenish Lake Bluff's tree canopies. Are there any comments on this?
This is one of those that's continuing. Yeah.
The only thing I would add to this, and I'm not by any means we have plant experts on our committee, but as I look at the term native, I know that with climate change approaching us, I just ask us every time we look at what we're long-term plannings, if we're planning native species that are also well adapted to what we might anticipate over the next 10 to 15 years in terms of climate, or 20 years in terms of climate change. They're resilient natives, I guess. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Sure. Okay. Now this, I'm sorry. This next action is for light pollution, that goal. It's provide for the Architectural Board of Review to consider LEED-ND lighting standards when evaluating commercial site plans.
Yeah, I think this is part of our larger goal, overall goal, for a model lighting ordinance to move us more towards dark sky, which was a high priority for us. The one thing I can, now this says private commercial. Do we have also an item on public property? Because is there an item on lighting for government owned?
It says public and private.
Okay, public and private. Okay. I know, because this is one of my personal goals, I know that as various public improvements have come, and this includes the Jawa plant, I reviewed the lighting, and we were able to adapt dark sky LEED compliant lighting into the renovations at the Jawa outdoor lighting. I know that recently worked with Glenn and Drew on the train station lighting upgrades, looking at better lighting for uplight and glare. We renovated the lighting on the exterior lighting of the fire station to be dark sky compliant. So I know that on the governmental side, on the public use side, and there's been a strong goal of the board and the village staff to put in the right kind of lighting. I think really the bigger area is going to be both in the commercial business and in the residential use of better lighting.
What about the schools? Have we reached out to the schools at all? Because I live right next to the elementary school, and it is lit up 24/7.
The elementary school is a LEED certified facility. The lighting in the parking lot is dark sky compliant. However, from what I have noticed in going past in the evening, they have some dock and security lighting, which is off the charts.
Yeah. But the whole, I mean, the exterior lighting, the landscape lighting that they have is constant. Even it might be dark sky compliant, it is very bright, but maybe that needs to be that.
We could take a look at it. I know that when I worked on it, and this was 10, 15 years ago, the lighting in the parking lot, the actual parking lot lighting, and the lighting that as you walked into the building was generally all LEED light pollution compliant lighting, but they may have made modifications since then. And also the biggest change, excuse me, we've had in lighting has actually been the controls in the last couple of years. The state of Illinois has even now got to the point when we did the fire station, which was well after the school, the amount of dimming that has to take place after hours is significant. So there's a lot of sophisticated lighting controls going on these days. But I think overall this remains, I think, a high goal and slightly difficult to do because there was a model lighting ordinance produced for communities to use, but it was done back in 2010.
Yeah.
So it is way outdated. And there has been talks in the last year or two about coming out with a model lighting ordinance version 2. I've got some emails out to people who work in the industry to ask them where the status of this is. In the meantime, what's happened is a number of towns, Pittsburgh and other communities, cities, have gone ahead and written their own ordinances. They've had experts come in and help them develop it. I'd much rather prefer to have one that's developed nationally and implement, but this has been high on our agenda, and it may come to the point where we may have to just try and plow through developing an ordinance, looking at other communities where they're at with their standards.
Well, and there's nothing in here about necessarily about public education of dark sky.
Mhm.
And that probably is something that should be considered in these two, just educate.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough. There'll be parts of this legislatively if the village board goes forward with this, which I think they want to. I think on the business side, I think it's fairly straightforward because new businesses come in and they have to replace or upgrade lights. They're going to do it the right way, right? I think where there'll be a challenge will be on the residential end. And I think about when we had to look at, I think Marina, you were on the board with me, sprinklers.
I still know about that. Ooh.
But I think that there's a way to tie it into, okay, if you're gonna renovate so much of your house or spend so much on permitting, that the lighting is upgraded as part of it. So I think that's the way we ended up kind of sneaking in the sprinkler ordinance.
Yeah.
Rather than making people go back and do it, which wouldn't go well.
Okay, the next action, which is also with light pollution. It's consider a recommendation of a zoning code amendment that restricts harmful and excessive public and private lighting. Now looking at an action for the bicycle and pedestrian transportation. Continue to incorporate bicycle and pedestrian specific improvements in the village's capital improvement program, especially in conjunction with road reconstruction projects, for example, complete streets. Prioritize projects that increase the number of residents within a 10-minute walk to a park via a dedicated sidewalk or trail.
Yeah, I think we brought this up, Drew, and publicly, and you and I talked privately. I think we still have a ways to go to make bikes accessible all the way around town. We have an amazing bike path, to Lake Forest or out to Libertyville or whatever, but through our own downtown and to the beaches and parks, it needs some work. And I think this still is a high priority for us. I think that the only way I see this getting done is for the board to fund a civil landscape architect to help us master plan something and at least get something put together.
Yeah. Especially if we're going to keep having the criterion here. It sort of sets us apart as a bike community, even though they're vastly different.
Glenn, would you share with the group the recent news about the bike race?
Yeah, so I can relate that there's for readers of the Village's e-news last Friday, there's a new national criterium series sponsored by USA Cycling. So Lake Bluff will be one of the 10 races nationally selected for that to have a race as part of that circuit. So out of the whole Intelligentsia Cup, I think really out of the whole Midwest, I'd have to look at the list. We were the winners for 2022. So pretty exciting.
Yep.
I think the colloquial, maybe Sam can help me out, the contemporary language, but I think the short story is we're kind of a big deal.
So I think that still remains a high priority. And I think our next steps for this are simply to request the SEC to request that we have professional help in doing a master plan for this.
Great.
Okay. Are there any other comments on BP-2? Okay. The last action with limited progress is partner with schools to promote walking and bicycling to and from school. Explore partnerships to teach students about safety. And this is in partnership with the Safe Routes to School program.
Did somebody mention something about the tunnel coming back or being relooked at? Drew, did you
No.
mention that?
Hard no on that.
Okay, all right. I know that when I was on the board, there was a lot of discussion about how safe some of the intersections are to get to some of the
Perception.
Yes, okay.
Well, and without getting in the weeds on this, I think at the time that project was proposed, there were a lot fewer tools in the toolbox of bicycle and pedestrian planners. I think there's a lot more gradual changes you could make to that street that would yield better effects. I mean, grade separation is a very extreme, very expensive option, and to put in perspective, for that $1 million, then God knows how much now. I mean, you could improve very many intersections.
Okay.
Okay, next.
So I just want to mention that there are 21 actions with no progress. Would you like me to read through them as well?
Yeah, we're running at about the 2-hour mark. What does the committee want to do?
Huh.
You can, as a suggestion, you can come back to these at the next meeting, and at the same time, you can review kind of updates that we can put together for, again, like we talked about very early on, indicators of success. You can kind of pick up and start fresh with that list, as well as start with this list of where there's been no progress. But if you're concerned about 2 hours in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if we took these last 21 with no progress and sent them to, as it is, to the committee? And then maybe we could prioritize the ones with no progress for the next meeting.
Sure.
I mean, like send in our top 3 to you, Samantha, and see if we get a little bit of a consensus. Or top 5. What do you think, Brian? Top 7?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay.
That would be a third. Maybe we get 5 that floated to the top.
I mean, I didn't think we would get through all of this. I mean, this is our complete roadmap.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to discuss here, but once we get this finalized up, we can definitely hit the ground running on the other issues.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I'm sure there's some on these 21 that need to be higher than they are.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Member Hans?
Yes, I agree with what's being said. Another suggestion I might have is in your comments section. It's very helpful for the first few words to be in 2020 or in 2022, because this plan is durable. It's going to stand the test of time. And over time, if we can see what was done in 2020, and then we're looking at it in 2025 and nothing's been done, so my suggestion is to standardize the comment just by saying in and the year. And then over time, we will really be able to judge progress over time. This is the first time we've used it because the plan is new. But do you see where I'm going with this? That over time, if we look at that, we'll have a better true indicator of progress, but we see what was done every year. And the other question I have to ask is, if someone outside of SEC saw this and asked me who actually does all of this work, I don't know the answer. Who does all of this stuff? Is it the village staff that does all of this? Monitor the use of, partner with the Lake Bluff School District, assess the feasibility. Who is doing that?
Oh, it's got to be the village. It's not Brian and me for sure.
So who is it?
It depends. It depends on the specific issue or task or metric.
So it's people in the village hall that are doing this.
Largely, yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So I understand, and if somebody says gosh, who does all this work? I can say, well, it's the village hall staff. Okay. Those are my 2 points. I think we should wrap things up now. And I love Marina's idea about all of us having a chance to look at this and respond.
If I may, Member Hans, to your point,
Mhm.
for clarification, that's another reason. I mean, this is, between all staff members, depending on the area. I mean, it's like we're doing all this and everything else, right? So there's only so much organizational capacity. And so that there's other priorities and there's times when these overlap with other priorities. For example, the replacement of the water meters. I mean, that was a village-wide initiative and it touched multiple departments and was a village board directive. We borrowed, $1 million. I mean, it was
Yes.
touched everybody. So the who is a long list.
I know it's a long list, but if that may help explain why certain things there's no progress, because other things with higher priority, with a limited number of staff, you can only do so much because you've got the rest of the village to run at the same time. So understanding who does the work may explain the progress in certain areas and not in others.
Agreed.
Yeah. No, it's a ton of work.
Well,
Yeah.
it's terrific to see how much has been done, and it's exciting to go
Yes.
through it step by step to see how much has been accomplished. So kudos to the village for hitting so many of these milestones. But it's also, I mean, I think part of the key is that sustainability also can pay for itself. So that's a message that we need to be really clear about as well.
Mhm.
Okay, I heard Member Hans make a motion to adjourn. She didn't exactly say it that way, but that's the way I heard it. So I'm going to second that.
Okay, before we take a full vote, was there any village staff reports that needed to be brought up tonight?
I don't have anything to update on unless Glenn or Drew do.
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. So your next meeting will be, on your regular schedule here. I believe it's will be on the 14th or the 21st, the 21st of February. So here in just a few short weeks, due to COVID-19, we are staying in a virtual format for all public meetings through February. So the format will be just like this. Hopefully it'll be safe and prudent, to use the words of the OMA, to be back in person in March.
So I just wanted to ask, it doesn't matter to me because I'm going to be here, but Monday, the 21st is a President's Day. Does that impact people's schedules? Including village staff? Are we open?
We are open for President's Day.
Okay.
Fine with
And
me.
excuse me, I'm actually wrong here on my dates. It's Tuesday the 15th. It's not Monday the 21st. That was a different set of dates we were looking at one point.
Tuesday the 15th. Oh, it's a Tuesday?
Yeah.
Did we decide on particular days of the week yet as going forward? I'm sorry if I'm forgetting.
Yeah, the third Tuesday of each month is what we had talked about and what we had given notice for.
Okay.
Not that could change in the future, certainly, but that's also
slightly less ideal for me are Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I will defer since it's only once a month with committee if that's the day that everyone wants. We can always adjust it going forward.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, Glenn?
That's it, sir.
Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn.
I have one more thing.
Oh, one more thing. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say big thank you to Samantha or anybody else that was involved in getting this interactive spreadsheet to us. It was really helpful to me to be able to manipulate the data. It was easy, it was fast, and I really, really appreciated it. So a big thank you to anybody involved with that. It was a fabulous idea.
Yep, thank you. Okay, do we just need an all in favor or roll call? I can't remember with the online meetings.
I believe I need to do a roll call.
That's what I thought.
You don't, Sam, you're okay.
Oh, okay.
Then we just go peace out. Bye.
Yeah.
All right, take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Night.